Greetings, Facebook family. This is Pastor Lamaya Williams, and I am back to bring you part three of my life, my story, my testimony with Apostle Ryan J. Fontenot. God bless you, Apostle. It's good to be here again with you.
God bless you. It is absolutely a privilege to be here.
Absolutely. Now, we have been going deeper every week and just really uncovering and really digging into your life and who you are. How has that experience been for you so far doing that?
It's been a good experience. It's been an interesting experience. It is something that I desire to do, as I mentioned last week. Just the Holy Spirit leading me to do it in hopes that somebody is listening and hearing my story and prayerfully being blessed by it, and being encouraged by it in whatever way they'll apply it to their life. So it's been interesting to say the least.
Now, before we jump in tonight, can you share with us a little bit about your projects that you have coming up?
Yeah, we're working on this project, which is coupled with our book. The book is called I Said Yes, which basically talks about the cost of saying yes to God. And so, with that, it's going to be this documentary that's going to be coupled with that. And then also, working on a single. The Lord gave me a song right in the middle of everything I was going through called All Things New. And so, we're working on that. So, prayerfully, sometime here in this summer, we're going to be releasing all that information, all those
That's
projects
awesome.
for the people. So,
That's
I'm excited.
awesome. And who were some of the people that you are working with on the music project that you?
Well, we actually got some different fillers out there, so
Okay.
but I'm excited about what God's doing, and y'all just stay tuned.
Okay.
And so we are. Let me just put this in there before we dig too deep. We are get ready to launch the RJF Ministries web page and go back make our Facebook page present as well. So that's separate from what we do here at the well. So.
Awesome. Now, we want to talk about last season. The last season of your life was very challenging, but can you tell us how 2018 started off for you?
2018 started off good. Started off great. It was a year that we actually, ministry wise, saw God do some really amazing things in our church for the first 6 months of the year. Um, and even personal wise, we were had some challenges and some struggles, of course. But last year, we saw God even bless the personal side as well. So, I mean, it was incredible. Our church was growing. Um, not only was the church growing, but we had strong staff, strong members, in a good financial place. And so it was good. I was enjoying it.
Now, a lot of people may not know that the Well was formerly the Rock Church of Denver,
Yeah,
and has since the name has since been changed.
yeah,
But so everything last year started off well. Everything's going great. Everything's prospering, and then a drastic shift or turn of events, if I could describe it that way, happened.
absolutely.
Would you describe it? Would you describe last season as the darkest season in your life?
Yeah, absolutely. I have never been through anything like it prior to that, and it was the darkest season I've ever been through, lived through, ever had to face on so many different levels. And so it took God to bring me through. So, but yeah, that was a dark moment, and it just happened overnight. To be quite honest, the way it happened was so. I didn't have any time to prepare for it. I didn't have any time to brace for it. It just overnight, literally, my life went from one Sunday being in peace to Monday morning, all hell had broke loose. So it was a very dark season.
Now, as you know, it's no secret that last year there was a video leaked, and allegedly domestic violence is taking place in this video, and while the kids were present. Um, what do you have to say about that leak?
Um, I will say, first of all, let me say that my heart and my mind and who I am as an individual, and that's collectively as a man first, and then certainly as a pastor, and what my call is to the body of Christ. In no way um, condone or think that any level of domestic violence is right, um, even regardless of situations. Um, and so I don't think it's right. I think that um, humanity and humankind have to find better ways to funnel through tough seasons. So there was a video that was leaked, and I can't get into a lot of details concerning things around it, just because some of the things that we had to deal with or are still dealing with. Um, and so, but I really want people to know that coupled with the video was commentary and assumptions and just a narrative that these bloggers created that was just extremely false. That was not. That's not who I am. That's not what I stand for. It is not something that that was a part of a normal life, or it wasn't something that we dealt with on a daily basis or anything of that sort. And so all the commentary surrounding that video is just 9 times out of 10 is just completely false and lies. I think the bloggers did the very best that they could to try to create a story in absence of the truth. And so, but my heart and my mind concerning that is that I in no way condone it, in no way justify any domestic violence, and that is both for men to women and women to men.
Mm-hmm.
I think that sometimes we overlook it when it's from women to men, and then we magnify it when it's from a man to a woman. But I think all of it's wrong, regardless of what it is. And so I in no way condone it and or justify any behavior from anybody concerning domestic violence. And so it has been a journey trying to process what happened last year, and then try to pick up the pieces of my life and continue on. So,
How have you, with all of that happened, how have you handled people wanting your head on a platter, basically, and just wanting to crucify you and attacking you in every way possible, and just dragging your name through the mud? How was
um,
that?
at the time that everything broke last year, at the time that everything um, went public, I'll say that because um, we were dealing with it privately, of course, and then unfortunately, when you're a public figure, people like to exploit your life, and so when everything went public, it added so much pressure. It added so many issues and so many problems. It was incredible when things went public and the bloggers um, continued. Like it wasn't just a 1 day type of thing. Like this continued for a week and a half or 2 weeks, and I was getting messages from all around the world. Um, people who wanted to kill me or said I should burn in hell and all these other type of things. And so at the time, the best way that I was getting through it was ignoring it and letting the people around me know that I not to uh, tell me what was being said. Because the more you hear about what's being said, especially because it was false, it was just lies. And then there's a level of anger and resentment and bitterness and stuff. And so I got through it by trying to really ignore it and try to keep my focus on, at the time, was just my own survival. Just trying to make sure that I got through the season in my right mind.
Absolutely. Now, there was another video. In this video, you offered a response to all of the chatter that was going on. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, that was a very interesting day. Um, I can say that that day came about because s- I was largely being manipulated, and I think played with emotionally, and that was just a breakdown for me. That was a day where I didn't care what anybody had to say. I didn't care what people thought of me. You know, I've lived my entire life under this microscope of the opinions of everybody. And so that was a day I just said, wait a minute, I'm gonna say whatever I have to say. Whatever happens after that, it just happens. And so I went on there and said what I had to say. I didn't lie, but it was no way in a form of me excuse making for anything. I've never ran from this situation. I've never lied about this situation. I've been overly accountable, in my opinion, in more ways than one, to more than one avenue or to more than one individual. Anybody who I felt was directly affected by this situation, I have personally offered, either an apology or whatever I needed to offer to bring consolation to it. So that day was the epitome of just a breakdown. And I felt like I'm gonna say what I have to say, regardless who likes it or not. And I wish I didn't, of course. But when you're in the height of you fighting for your life and you're fighting for your name and your character, and people are listening to one story and you know who you really are, you tend to do whatever you have to do to prove who you are.
Sure.
But that was the kind of the epitome of what happened that day.
So would you say that that was out of character for you
To do it on
to
that
do
day, oh,
that
absolutely,
response?
absolutely. I'm a very private person as it is, and I've never talked about my private life publicly or anything I've ever struggled through publicly, not even in my church, amongst people or anything. I just have, I believe in a strong level of discretion in private life. And so um, that was me backed up in a corner. And I came out swinging with my words.
Sure. Um, Now, it was said that you attempted suicide again last year. Is that true?
Yeah. And that was a very dark moment in my life. And strongly, I've had to process the last season through spiritually and
Hmm.
trying to understand what God wanted me to understand during that last season. And so I believe that a lot of what I went through was spiritually, even though sometimes I processed it naturally. And when I began to process it naturally, it made life seem like it was not worth living. Whether it was my future or whether it was the havoc in the moment. Um, and so one day the spirit of manipulation just hit me really, really, really hard. And what was coming after me and just being attacked. Not so much was my concern publicly, but just the private attacks from um, somebody who I thought loved me and had built this life with her. And they got stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger until one day I just said I'm done and I'm tired and was over with. And I attempted it, and by the grace of God, it did not work. I told the Lord from that day forward, I'll never have to worry about that again. But it was a very dark moment. How how this information reached bloggers so quickly?
That's still
Uh,
unknown as to how.
because from my recollection, I think it was like literally the next day that the gentleman who was the blogger was talking about it. So
Mhm.
it was literally from one day to another, and there was so much going on. Like I don't think people realize they were seeing something from a social media perspective, but there was so much going on in this city between myself and her and our church and the individuals who were involved and family. It was a whole nother world. There was one world with what was being said on social media. Then there was a reality that we were sitting in. And it was so much. And I attempted it, and by the grace of God, it didn't work. And I moved on from that. And but yeah, it was difficult. And then to see that it was being mocked in a sense and made fun of by Jives, whatever his name is, by Jives, to say that it was, or he, he labeled it or something
Mhm.
like he tried to commit suicide as a way out. And that's why I think people have to realize there's a social media reality, and then there's a reality of what was actually happening in our life at the time. And so, but yeah,
So no one knows because usually when an event happens like that, it should be confidential.
absolutely,
And so for that information to be leaked is beyond me how, because I work in the medical field. So that just, it's is appalling.
yeah,
But with everything that has happened, can you speak on what your marital status is now?
yeah. I both her and I came to the decision to annul it and to um, move on. Very difficult this decision to come to, but I think necessary for us. So at this point, we are not married any longer and are moving on in our personal.
So you are
Um,
divorced
yeah.
at this. Um, in speaking on divorce, how has that affected the children?
It affects it greatly. I mean, it's you've worked your entire life to build a life and to build a certain level of um, comfortability, and then it's just all ripped apart. And so it's been hard for me. It's been hard for all of us, I'm sure. It's been hard for the kids, and so them adjusting to now spending time with us separately, not seeing us together anymore, going to different churches. So it's very greatly affected them. But luckily, they're young enough that we can still do our best to make sure that they understand the process. And I've had conversations with my children to help them understand what happened, the process of what we're going through, and even how we're going to build for the future.
I think that's one of the hardest things to go through is divorce. It can be even traumatic for
Absolutely,
children.
absolutely.
So we are praying for them. Um, but I can also imagine that the church also was greatly affected. And I have to say, as a church family, one of the hardest things, and I believe I can speak for all of us, but one of the hardest things was to see um, the attacks against you both. Um, and, not be able to say anything or, in the flesh, let me put it that way. Now, some people, did take it there, but it was really hard to see the slander and the attacks and all of the mean things that people were saying. But not only that, one of the hardest things to see was the people of God um, condemning and condemning the ministry and everything. But one of the things that you were accused of was causing people to take sides. And I imagine that, there was a split because I wasn't here. But tell me what happened uh, with the ministry at this point. Um, if there was a split, was there a split? But also address that accusation of you pitching people to take sides between you and the former First Lady of the Rock Church.
Um, the scenery at our church um, was solemn. It was a moment where um, the true hearts of individuals were revealed. Hearts, number one, as a believer, and then secondly, as a person who's connected to a ministry. It was, I can't say it. Well, no, it was hectic.
I'm sure.
It was extremely hectic.
Yeah.
It was crazy. I had, at the time, I had decided to take some time away from the ministry and to sit down on a sabbatical just to give me time to process through what was happening in my life. And the church had been placed into one of my spiritual daughter's hands, and her husband and the team who were working together to make sure it stayed afloat. But it was difficult because I knew that I wasn't going through by myself, that my family was going through with me, my children were going through with me, my church was going through with me, and it affected us greatly. I mean, there were times we got here and all we could do was worship, or all we could do was cry. Everybody was worried about me. And there are many days that I showed up, not even for me, but I showed up just so they would know I was okay. And
Mhm.
because I know that they were worried about me. And so, but I showed up to make sure that they knew.
It's all right. Take your time.
Sorry.
It's all right.
I showed up to make sure that my church knew that I was all right.
Mm-hmm.
And but yeah, then the other accusation. Let me just move on because if I don't, um,
uh, yeah, this is
the accusation of uh, choosing sides.
mhm.
Uh, since the beginning of the situation, I explained to my church and to my staff that there was no side to take. I think wrong is wrong and right is right. And if there's wrong and fault on both sides, then you just say wrong is fault on both sides. But there's enough grace to cover the both of us. Um, so I've never, since the beginning of the conversation, ever told anyone that they had to choose a side. I think that it got to such a vicious and malicious point, and a very vicious and malicious level, uh, that it got to the point to where I did tell them, not that you have to choose a side, but I gave them the reality of what I was facing, what I was still covering, even in the midst of me being attacked and in the midst of me being ridiculed across the country. I was still covering. I was still not really saying what happened. I was still not really opening my mouth and sharing details. And so, but when it got to the point that I felt like there was an all out assault against me, I never told anyone to choose sides. What I did do was share the reality of what I was going through, and ask them not to be connected to individuals who were assaulting who I was. And if that's choosing side, I never, then it is what it is. But I think at that point it was like we're trying to do our best to recover as a ministry and try to go forward in life and period. And so it's critical that if you're going to be here, that you not be influenced by individuals who left here who have a malicious intent to make sure that we don't make it as a church. And so but I told in my staff and people who were here the night of the meeting will tell you, I've never once asked anybody to choose side. I don't believe that there's a side to take. I think you choose right. And if I'm wrong, then I'm
Mhm.
wrong. If the other person's wrong, then the other person's wrong. But that's kind of where I address that.
Mhm. Um, excuse me. Um, how did the church respond to you and what you were going through? Who were the people that embraced you and where's your covering at this point? Who's pouring into you?
Um, for the large majority of our church, the people who are with me have been with me for a while. And so I think that they have the ability to judge me by my character and what I've showed to them, and that I'm a very accountable person. I don't run. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But if I'm not, I'm going to fight for the truth. And so my church really, for and for really the first time during probably, I think last year was 10 years of ministry, it was the first time I felt their prayers.
Mm.
They were having prayer meetings. And, I remember even you flew out here to check on me. And
Mm-hmm.
so um, you'll never know.
Um, so, was there a tremendous amount of loss? Did you lose a lot of people?
Yeah, yeah, honestly, last year we probably lost anywhere between probably about 35 or 40 people, maybe a little bit more that left the ministry. And so that was hard. And we lost leaders and people who had been here for actually a long time walked away from the ministry last year. Dealt with extreme betrayal last year because I felt like I was good enough to cover you, through
Mm-hmm.
whatever they went through or through whatever their struggles were. But when it came time to cover me in the sense that I was being attacked, they couldn't handle it. But the ministry lost a lot. We lost a lot numerically wise, people wise, but then, of course, we lost a lot financially. And we're really struggling to keep our building and make sure bills are still paid. Um, and so, as all this is going on, you're being attacked publicly. You're going through, divorce, separation, and then then there's another dimension of the story, and we'll talk about that. But then on top of that, you still got to be a pastor. You still got to provide direction for a church and figure out how you're going to keep moving. So, but the ministry, we were hit very greatly, very, very, very greatly. Financial wise, people wise, and just being attacked. I know many of those people who stood with me were being attacked for standing with me.
Mm-hmm.
They were being attacked for loving me. They were being attacked for um, not abandoning me while I was in one of the worst seasons of my life, which I couldn't understand it because I thought that's what Christianity was about.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that's what the plight of Jesus was about, was to be able to love and cover and see that people get restored in the worst time of their life, not kicked, knocked down, destroyed. And so that was difficult for me. But these are some strong people,
Yeah.
and I appreciate and I thank them. They'll never, excuse me, never know or understand how much my heart was glad that they. That's what made me keep coming. Was when I got here, they were here. They were praying for me, fasting for me, and just believing that I would make it. That was so. That was the first time in my pastorate that I really felt appreciated or loved or honored. And so, yeah, I thank my church, TRC, the Well, everybody. I thank them for standing with me. And the people who left, I love them. Um, Everybody has to make a decision about where they are and what they believe and their own convictions, and so I'm okay with that. I have no ill will against anybody who left. Many of them left out of order and left wrongly, but I've put it all under the blood, and then we're moving on. But to those who stayed, I'm eternally grateful for their perseverance, and I think because I know they were being attacked
Mm-hmm.
through this as well. So
That's awesome.
so
Where would you say? Where did you see God in all of this?
if I'm honest, when I was right smack dab in the middle of it, I didn't. Uh, I remember, on my iPhone, just picking up my iPhone one day and writing, and it was a letter that I wrote to the Lord, and just told Him how abandoned I felt, and I felt like I'd given Him my life at such a young age, all I knew was church. All I've done was ministry. I haven't lived this other kind of life. I haven't, and and I'm human, so I make mistakes and I have failures and different things I go through. Um, but it was really hard for me to find God. I wish I could say I was praying and fasting every day, but I was not. I was in the lowest parts of depression and just dealing with where my mind was, and so I could not find Him. I think it took people around me encouraging me, people around me, um, even strangers. And I'll say this too, because just as much as I was getting hate mail, I was getting other mail from around the world to say, I'm standing with you and I'm praying with you. And I believe God with you for your survival. And I believe God, for you and your ministry. And so it took that to kind of get my mind back. And it was a gradual process, not an immediate one. Yeah, there were many. It was very high highs and very low lows. Some
Sure.
days I wake up and I was all right. Other days it was just each day I had to rediscover God, and He had to do that for me because I had been doing this for so long, and God and I have reacquainted ourselves with each other, and the relationship that I now have with Him is stronger than any level it's been in my entire life. And so it's because of that situation, because of that season of my life. But yeah, it was hard, but eventually
Was there
I
any
found Him.
was there any prophetic word or anything that God spoke to you that stuck out to you that you just held on to?
Oh man, there was several words. I remember one day I was sitting in the bathroom and just was overwhelmed, and then you text me. It was difficult, but I heard the word and it brought so much solace and peace to my spirit, even concerning things that I'm going through now. One of my other spiritual daughters, Danessa, I know she took on the burden for me
Yes.
greatly in the last season, and I know that was hard
Hmm.
for her, and how the Lord has gifted her and really called her to be. And so she would encourage me. And then there was a gentleman by the name of Alan Young who
Hmm.
lives in uh, North Carolina,
Hmm.
who flew all the way to Denver. I'm not. I didn't know him. He didn't really know me, but he heard about what was going on, and he flew all the way to Denver. And the Holy Spirit just told him to come here and to encourage me. And he sewed a prayer shawl into me, and just prophetically spoke to me everything that I needed to hear at that moment. Coupled with him was one of my sisters, Yolanda Moran, who, when I tell y'all, every day she would write me. Every single day she would send an encouraging word. Every day she just let me know I'm praying for you. I'm believing God for you. Or send me a little meme or something. So, and even with Alan, he told me that he was connected to an apostolic group of people who I didn't even know, who all around the world were praying for me and believing God for me. So, and I have brothers, Pastor De'Eric Fields, who I'm going to be with this week in Kansas City,
Awesome.
preaching for him. And so he was with me, and Pastor Chris Hooker from Kansas City. And just um, uh, while I'm just throwing names out here, my little brother Royal, who's here with me in Denver now, Prophet Darius Walt and Prophet Patrick Wallace in Boston, who they just really just start pouring into me and sowing it. Got to the point where it was like, okay, if you need to come out here and live with me for a time,
I
and
know I was trying to get
yeah,
you.
it was, and so as much as it was difficult, there were a lot of people who were pouring into me, and so the noise of my support
Hmm.
eventually got louder than the noise of my haters. And so I'm extremely and just grateful for them and the people who stuck with me. And I think it's very important that the people watching this and the people who hear my story understand that when you cover somebody, it doesn't necessarily mean you condone them.
Absolutely.
And so if you mess up and I refuse to walk away from you, but instead I cover you. And when I say cover you, I'm saying that I'm not going to abandon you at the worst season of your life. I'm going to work with you. I'm going to pray with you. I'm going to stand with you and make sure that you survive it. And so I think that it was hard for the people in the world and the church to understand that when you stand with somebody, it don't mean you condone what they did. It just means that there's value in the relationship, that you decide to cover them. Same situation with Noah and his sons. Noah got drunk in front of everybody
Mm-hmm.
and was naked, the
Mm-hmm.
Bible says. And one son got in front of them and said, absolutely not. You cannot see my father in this position. And so the other son pointed and laughed. And so at last year, we found out which son was which son.
Mm-hmm.
Some pointed and laughed. The other one said, absolutely not. And I'm grateful for it.
Do you feel that there's been a shift in you, uh, in your call, in your mantle, since all of this has happened?
Absolutely. I have such a heart. It's so crazy. I was really thinking about this today. I have such a heart for the pastor. I love the Lord has allowed me to pastor for 11 years. I love it. And through apostolic grace, there's a portion of pastoring. But my heart really is for people like me who people don't know or understand what we've endured or what we have to go through to be in the public eye and what we're trying to manage behind the scenes to stay faithful to the call. And then you're constantly ridiculed and constantly, people are constantly judging you. It doesn't matter what you do. And so my heart is for them. My heart is really for people in ministry who have to live your life in front of everybody. And I really want to spend the rest of my tenure and my life in ministry working with people like that. Now I'm grace. I can preach and all the other stuff and provide direction for ministry and pastor, all that kind of stuff. But I need to make sure the fivefold ministry is all right. That's a burden that the Lord has upon me very greatly. So
I really think it's awesome that um, you are sharing your story and being transparent, because one of the things that I believe God is doing is purifying the fivefold. I really believe that
absolutely.
um, integrity is going to be restored in the fivefold, and God is going to purify it again. But what would you say? Well, first, let me ask you this: how are you taking care of yourself mentally? I know last season you talked about the attempt of suicide,
Yeah.
and you had another one prior to that. But what are you doing to take care of your mental stability?
I found out that you counseling,
Mm-hmm.
counseling, and then not really neglecting myself.
Mm-hmm.
Sometime in ministry, we feel like we have to sacrifice us for the people, and for probably a large part of my ministry life, I've done that. I've sacrificed my happiness, my time, my everything to try to stay faithful to an assignment. And that's because that's just my nature and my character. I'm not a quitter.
Mm-hmm.
I will push. I don't care how bad it gets. We gonna make a way. We gonna
Mm-hmm.
figure out how to do it. And so in that, I neglected me, even in terms of just self care. Making sure I'm doing good mentally, emotionally, spiritually. One of the things that I put in my place was counseling. The other thing is good, godly friendships. And so I've been challenged in that area with friendships to make sure the people who I'm around, that it's a covenant and not just a
Mm-hmm.
contract, that we are sowing and speaking into each other's life. And so, and then I've also alleviated a lot of pressure on me in ministry, because at the time I was balancing everything by myself. I was doing literally everything, and that didn't work out for me. So if there's pastors out there who doing everything, they better balance it out. Let somebody who loves the ministry share some of the load. So I just had to take the time to evaluate where my life was and make some adjustments. One of them is counseling. Another one is lightening my load. What can I do? The pastor should only do what nobody else can do. And then outside of that, it was making sure that my connections were pure. And then next with that is just making sure I'm just taking care of myself. Go out to the movies. Be okay to be human.
Mm-hmm.
Okay to go and enjoy, some good food or enjoy whatever. So yeah.
What would be something that you would say to anybody, not just pastors, but anybody who may be thinking about ending it all. They may be thinking about doing that right now. What would you say to them?
Um, it's not. It's really not worth it. And it's a trick of the enemy. Like the enemy knows to prey on us in our vulnerable state. And so, get yourself, surround yourself with people who can speak life. Most importantly, reach out for help. Um, Talk to somebody. One day I felt myself coming unglued. I just had to go find somebody to talk to. I know I blew your phone up a lot last year. Pastor Norm, forgot about him. Pastor
Yeah.
Norm and Apostle Colette Chase. Oh God, they were just incredible. Took me out to eat anytime I wanted to eat. And so, but I would say get some help. Reach out for help. Have good people around you, and realize it's a permanent fix to what really is a temporary problem.
Mhm.
And at the moment, I couldn't see my way out. I couldn't see that I would be standing here or sitting here today, sharing my story and what I've been through. All I could see what was in the moment, and that's how the enemy wanted to limit my vision, so I could only see what was now, and to not only see what was now, but to over magnify what was now, to where you feel like, okay, I'm not, the only way out is suicide, and it's really not. And on top of that, it's painful. Ain't nobody trying to go through that pain. It's crazy. And so, find other ways and other mechanisms. Go talk to somebody. I know sometime in our African American culture, counseling is frowned upon, but if you have to go talk to somebody and get out what you're going through, please do that to save your life. So,
You had some really uh, deep cuts and things happen to you. Um, but when it was all uncovered and you saw who or what was cutting you, um, how did you feel? Because sometimes you can see an attack coming and sometimes you can't.
oh man, this was one, as I mentioned before, I couldn't see. When I think it was revealed on where it was coming from, it broke my heart. It broke my heart in so many different ways. It broke my heart because I couldn't understand how people who you've once shared life with could turn on you so viciously, and could, in my opinion, do everything that they could to kill me. Do everything they could to destroy my ministry, to destroy my name, to destroy my reputation. When in reality, many of them who have went on from me are standing on the grace of who they are because of their connection with me, if that makes any
Hmm.
sense. And so you're standing on the grace of who you have become because you are connected to me. All the while you turn back and try to throw rocks and destroy the platform that you was raised upon, which is part of the spirit of Absalom, coupled with, and I want to say Prophetess Erica too was a great part of that. She spoke real strong and very prophetically in my life, and she got on my nerves sometimes. But I appreciate her and the
Yeah.
grace and the mantle that she's on, that's on her life. But it was hard to swallow. I couldn't understand. Like, and I've been good to you. I've been real good to you, and so I couldn't understand why people would set on a plight to kill me. And that was one of the biggest difficulties of last season. Is, I spent time saying, what did I do? What did I do to God? What did I do to the people? Am I supposed to be? Am I in the wrong thing? Or what is God? What do you want from me, Lord? Like, and so because I feel like there are some attacks where you get cut on your arm and your
Hmm.
legs and around you.
Hmm.
This one was a dagger straight through my heart.
Hmm.
And not only was it good enough just to see that it was in my heart, but they were like grinding it to make sure I felt
Hmm.
what I felt. And so it was hard. It was hard, and a lot of anger came, a lot of resentment, bitterness, and so I wanted to be vindicated, and I wasn't gonna wait for God, and neither was my family, because my
True.
family had to sit back and watch me go through that.
Yeah.
My mother, had to sit back. My grandmother, my brothers and my sisters had to sit back and watch the world, attack their brother. In many cases, their little brother. I'm the youngest boy.
Hmm.
Um, And so you saw my family speak up.
Mhm.
You saw my brother and my sisters, and they handle stuff a little bit differently than I handle. And so it was just so hard. It was hard. My cousins and family all around the city were just speaking up and doing their best to defend me, until I finally told everybody. And I came here one Sunday and told them, nobody say anything else. Let God fight for me. And I had to swallow that too.
Mhm.
And I said, let God do this thing for me. Let him do it. And so we did our best. They backed up as much as they could. and we just let God start fighting and working things out. And so it was a difficult process. This process really went on from October of last year till March of this year. So about a 6-month process of just straight warfare. Trying to live, trying to overcome, and still having people who are part of the ministry who were connected to, people who were out there trying to annihilate or kill or destroy. And so it was a difficult. Then some of the members start manifesting.
Oh
Folk I done
God.
helped.
Wow.
Then went on Facebook and started Facebook Lives and just spreading false narratives. And these are individuals who I've gone out of my way to help. And so I had to suck it up and just say, okay, Lord, you have trusted and graced me for this level of suffering. And I'll say this, it has brought such a level of reverence between me and God, and a level of holiness, that I honor the Lord for allowing me to go through what I go through, to stand in the grace of who I am now, with full conviction that when I preach or when I declare, when I'm helping other people, it comes from a different place of relational things with God, and even holiness and how I live. And standing in truth is liberating.
Mhm.
I've lived a lie before, so I know the grace and the
Sure.
power of standing in the truth. So
Now, would you say that warfare was part self-infliction, part spiritual? A little bit of both, or one or the other?
the warfare of the last season,
Mhm.
yeah, I think some of what I went through was because of my own decisions and stuff
Sure.
like that. Well, it provoked by my own decision,
Mhm.
but and the rest of it, it turned from that to extreme satanic attack. He just used that
Mhm.
to launch it into a soup. Like it was extreme. It was extreme at levels I probably can't even comprehend, and the people probably won't even understand. It was extreme from my brothers, family wise, things that were happening on the family level in the city. It got real bad, to the point that I said, if if something don't shift, somebody's gonna get hurt.
Mhm.
Somebody's going to get hurt if the Lord does not intervene in this situation. While
Mhm.
everybody was laughing and mocking and sharing and having conversations about it, we was living this thing straight up real life, and it was getting ugly, and it was getting ugly very fast. And so, thankfully, the Lord intervened,
Yes.
and and nothing happened or transpired, but it got pretty bad.
What is a lesson that you would expect your sons and daughters to take away from you?
I would like them to see, when they look at me, to see my strength, and to see my strength even in my vulnerabilities. That you can go through an extreme amount of trouble and trials. Trouble is born, it is come because of you, and then trials come because God has orchestrated those things in your life. But you can go through an extreme amount of ridicule, trouble, satanic attack, and not only survive, but come out stronger and put together the pieces of your life. And then I want them to see that you don't relent from what you're called to do.
Mhm.
You accept this mantle, and many times you accept it, and it's more mature than you are. And so you hold on to it even through your failures. You hold on to it regardless of what they say. You hold on to it regardless of what you even feel about yourself sometimes. And so it's critical that, especially my sons and daughters, they understand. I want them to see their spiritual father as a mantle, as a pillar of strength, and a pillar of loyalty and faithfulness to the call of Christ. That even if this thing kills me, I'm gonna die serving God. I'm gonna die doing what I was called to do. So yeah, those are a couple of things that I want them to see, that you can push through.
Amen. Wow. So good. Well, we want to open up Facebook Live and answer your questions. So feel free to put your questions in the comments, and we'll be happy to answer them.
Amen. I want to shout out my sister and my mother on here. I love you too, Nisha. But yeah, I thank God for you all joining.
Wow.
Amen. Thank you so much, Pastor Gail. Thank you so much for, and Brother James Chavers. I'm seeing these people now because if I forget anybody, it's not because I don't want to. But he was a very instrumental part. Really encouraged me every day, sending me scriptures and just praying for me, encouraging me through that. I said, Prophetess Erica, my sister, who one of my sisters, and I haven't had many sisters in ministry that I had good just good godly relationship. But Evangelist Bridget Couch has
Mhm.
really been a sister to me, and I know she was caught in crossfire a lot of times, and they were talking about her, and they were trying to make it something that it wasn't. But I appreciate her for standing with me and praying with me.
Mhm.
There are many times, just like you, I call her crying and Lord, whatever.
Mhm.
But she prayed with me, and she prayed for not just me; she prayed with and for both of us.
Mhm.
And so I appreciate her for that as
I think that's one thing that people did not realize is that, while all this was going on, that we were praying for you both.
well.
Um,
Yes,
and the narrative,
yes,
the way it was depicted, it made it seem as if, there were sides or that we were condoning. But one of the things that we said is that we don't condemn anyone, but we don't condone. But to really understand the reconciliation of Christ and his forgiveness, his mercy, his grace, to really know that in its true authenticity is important in this hour, in this day. There's so
absolutely.
many people who don't love, and there's just no love. And so many people are craving the supernatural without relationship. And, that turns into witchcraft. And we see that in a lot of ministries. And
Absolutely. You know, we have gotten to such a place in Christendom and in the body of Christ where we have lost essence of what it means to be a disciple.
mhm,
And I say this even the way that we saw the church handle Carlton Pearson.
mhm,
I say it the way that we saw the church handle Ted Haggard,
Eddie
or
Long.
any preacher that messes
Mhm,
up, any preacher that, or any person that messes. It's We have forgotten that spirituality, according to Scripture, is equated to how well you restore somebody,
mhm,
not how many tongues you speak in,
mhm,
or how much you are getting to a deep level of worship, or how much you prophesy, or how many miracles come from you. The Bible says, "You who are spiritual,
mhm.
restore such a one."
Yeah.
So if spirituality is equated to my ability to look at somebody in a pit and restore them, then how spiritual is the church of the 21st century?
Mhm,
And I want to say this: what the Lord really began to press upon my heart even last year is the fact that many people, I've come to a different revelation concerning church hurt.
mhm,
I don't think there are many people who have been hurt by the church that I do have been hurt by the harlot, which is
mhm,
the spirit that's trying to disguise itself as the church.
mhm,
Because the Bible is very clear on how the bride of Christ manifests herself,
mhm,
which means if you have experienced any manifestation outside of that, then you have not met the bride.
mhm,
You have met an institution, an organization, or an individual who is disguising as they were the bride when really they probably just were a person who attended church,
mhm.
who through their immaturity hurt us. And so I think we have to really get the difference between the bride and the harlot. The
That's
harlot
so
will
true.
hurt you, abandon you, talk about you, kick you when you're down, ridicule you, forget about their history, and kill you because of yours. Meanwhile, the bride will accept you, cover you, make sure you're healed, get you back to a place of functionality. And so we have to be careful on those two different things.
Sure.
But
That's
I know I
good.
just went on the whole rant.
I don't think I see any questions, but that was one of the things that I have noticed in this time that we live in is the lack of love. And I just asked God one day, where is the love for one for another? And the Lord reminded me that in Matthew 24, He said, "The love of many shall wax cold."
Absolutely.
And I don't think we
Absolutely.
realize that.
Absolutely.
But that's what's happening. Many hearts are turning cold. Many are falling away from the faith. But that's a
Absolutely.
whole nother
Now,
subject
I
again.
really, for the people that's, I believe, is one of the things that kept me, is
Hmm.
I really felt like, man, these people love me.
Hmm.
And you can give your life to people and feel like, there are many times I said they don't care about me. They just want me to keep working and preaching and encouraging their life and forget if I don't worry about if I'm alive or dead.
Hmm.
And so, but I felt the love. I felt the love of especially those who were close to me.
Yeah.
God, I felt that in the
Hmm.
last season. And once I felt it, it became a balm of healing for me.
Hmm.
It became a reason to continue going on. It became a reason to continue to fight. Because these people, they love me with an everlasting love from God that really encouraged me. So,
Hmm.
yeah.
That's awesome.
I know I see one of my brothers from Colorado Springs. He said, "What made you keep going?" Man, um,
Misha said, it was so hard to see people do our blessing so wrong. We are blessed to have you in our life.
yeah,
Um, my dad, PhD Michael Crawford, says Satan hit you with a death blow. It was designed to take you out, but you survived, and that's a miracle.
amen, amen. I appreciate you.
Pastor Gail Bailey, we will continue to lift you up in prayer. The devil is a liar. I'm standing with you, my brother.
Thank you, Pastor Gill.
Lots of encouraging words tonight. Dustin Jackson said, "What made you keep going?" He
Uh,
crazy. No, I'm just playing.
that's the problem. Um, I think yesteryear, last year was my way out. If I wanted to quit, it was the perfect
That
time
was
to
it.
quit. Like, it had created a moment where I was like, okay, Ryan, this is your chance.
Hmm.
Get out of it and go live a normal life, And I'm arrested to God's call for my life.
Hmm.
I, I have tried to quit.
Hmm.
I've had the meeting with my church and told them we were closing our ministry
Hmm.
last year, right smack dab in the middle of last year. I've had the meeting, and I couldn't even wake up the next day before one of God's prophets called me and tell me that God's throwing the towel back at me.
Hmm.
So I'm arrested to this call on my life, and my peace came in doing the same thing that I told you to do, which was to embrace what's on your life.
Yeah.
You're gonna be frustrated until you embrace what's on your
My
life.
God.
And so um, this is who I am. It's what I'm called for.
Rochelle says, "How do you handle facing the people who hurt you?"
How do you handle facing the people who hurt you? Uh, it depends on who it is. Honestly, I have exercised a level of forgiveness
Hmm.
that to me I thought I would never reach, or at least not reach it this soon. But because I understood that what God had for me to do was so bigger than the hurt I had experienced, I made the decision to forgive. And so, um, um, it was difficult, but I chose forgiveness. And so, how do I handle facing them? A lot of them I no longer have interaction with because even in many of them I've already forgiven,
Hmm.
but for reconciliation doesn't always mean reconnection, and so I
Say
forgive
that.
you, but it doesn't mean that
That's
you get
good.
to ever have a place in my life again,
Yeah.
because you've abused the position that I once had you in. So I've forgiven them, but as far as reconnection, may the
No.
Lord watch between me and you.
Pastor Devonte Hill says, "My brother, no matter what, I still love you. You've been resilient and you've shown God that you are committed to your purpose. Stay focused and keep the faith."
Amen.
It's
Appreciate you,
awesome.
brother. Appreciate his because he really encouraged me during the last season as well. We shared many times.
Amen.
There was something I wanted to say. Sister Naya Burgess She's on here. She's been on for the past couple of weeks. She said people had to treat you the way that they did because of the calling, and he had to teach you true forgiveness. Absolutely. She really, there was one day I was having a really tough day. And there are many tough days, but, and I opened my email and got an email from her. And, and it was so encouraging. It was like, man, it really was the breath of fresh air that I needed in that moment. I'm not sure if I even responded to the email because I didn't respond to a lot last year.
He left y'all on red.
I didn't respond to a lot last year, but I want her to know that I did get that email, and I appreciate what God did for me in reading that email that day. It really encouraged my heart.
What story in the Bible do you feel you relate to the most?
Oh man, there may be so many, but one of the things I think is Job.
My God.
God, and the extent of our trial is different, but I really felt like God just said, "Have you considered me?" Because that had to be an attack that, or a season that was orchestrated by God to process. And I went through the many different stages that Job did. Like Job went through a point where he cursed the day he was born, where he said, Lord, why did you even allow me to live? Or why am I even here? Or like, God, what are you doing? Then God had to remind Job, where were you when I formed the mountains?
Yeah.
Where were you when I separated the water, the dry ground from the oceans? And so I was reminded of the sovereignness of God, the sovereignty of God. And but yeah, I that one, and just the amount of ridicule like this. I'm an apostle, rightfully so. When I say rightfully so, it is not just who, it is not a title that was given to me. It is not something that I wanted. It is not something that I went chasing after. It is who I am, which means that my apostolic call is to be trusted, to blaze a trail. And when you're blazing trail, you got to be willing to be hit because you're going to be the first one in that territory. And so I have blazed trails for other people to come after me, for my sons and daughters to stand on my back and reach for whatever they need because they're connected to an apostolic mantle that's been processed through fire.
My God.
God, I felt that. I felt that real good. And so, and I say that confidently, and I say it with the grace and with humility, but I have been tried. And the Bible said, Job said, after he has tried me, I'll come forth as
That's
pure
it.
gold. And so I'm thankful for it. But because of my call to be an apostle, that's why the saints need to understand, don't be so quick
Listen.
running after titles and running after positions. And if you are not graceful, somebody else who would have been through what I went through would have not survived it. But because I'm graceful and because the apostolic is attached to who I am, I think that's consequently why I had to go through what I went through last season. So,
What level of freedom are you experiencing in sharing your story, your testimony?
man, it's so good. It's so good. I feel like, and I may have created this false narrative in my own mind, but anyway, I didn't. I may have created the narrative in my own mind that I could not share or that I could not be open. I just felt like as a pastor, you had to just be perfect. You can't let them people know what you're going through because you got to still preach to them. You got to still, and so it created a prison for me. It created a place of living, and I'm trying to keep up with an image that just wasn't real. And so being able to now get a fresh breath of air, especially because last year I had to shut up. I couldn't talk. I was bleeding too much to talk last year. And so I had to learn the importance of silent seasons. And so, but now that the Lord has given me permission to talk about it, it brings another level of healing. And then it's liberating. It's free. I'm not ashamed of anything, not my failures or my successes. All of them have been used to make me into the man that I am today. And the church has got to start being, we have got to let the people know that we minister to, that we're human. The reason why they look at us because we've created these narratives for them. And so it's liberating. It is freeing. And I encourage anybody out there, tell your story. Don't wait till the bloggers tell it because they're not going to tell it right. Don't wait until the National Enquirer tell it, because they're not going to tell it right.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to tell it with their own twists and turns to bring gain to them. You tell your story.
Absolutely. And where am I at? Right here. I just want to remind you that if you want to share your story, um, you can do so on this platform. Send us a message at thewelldenver.org and we will be happy to hear your story. One of the other questions is, do you think it's fair to preach to people while you're bleeding?
I think it is a part of the nature of being a pastor. We have been forced to encourage, preach, and to pour into individuals, all while we have been cut by the same people we're trying to pour
Hmm.
into. So I think if it gets to a level, some people are bleeding, some people are hemorrhaging,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and so if it gets to the level which um, at one point it got to the place where I knew I needed to take time away from preaching.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, I had to recognize this is a season you need to take away from your church, take away from your ministry, and really get yourself together as a man. So I don't know. Do I think it's fair? I think it's a part of our call. I think pastors do it all the time. And if any part isn't fair, it is the part that the people who receive from that cup still expect him to do it while he's bleeding. Because
Mm-hmm.
many pastors are not even given the opportunity to take a sabbatical,
Mm-hmm.
to take a moment, because everything is on their shoulders. And so we have to be sensitive, and the people around pastors have to be sensitive to know the heart and the spirit and the emotions of your leader. His covering needs to know when it's time to
What kind of people
pour in.
need to be around pastors?
Oh man, oh God, it's gonna open up a whole nother thing because I'm very sensitive to
Yeah,
that
yeah.
because of who I've had around me. I've had the wrong people around me,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't know it. And what was crazy is there were people telling me that I had the wrong people around me,
Mm-hmm.
and so you don't want to believe that who you chose to be in your inner circle is not who's supposed to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And so it took hell for me to realize that. Don't let it take hell for you to realize that. But what kind of people need to be around? They have to be strong. They have got to have a very clear understanding of the makeup of a person in ministry and understand that they are human and that they are have a mentor or a call upon their life. So if you can't handle the fact that your pastor puts on his pants just like you do, don't stay. Don't be next to him. If you can't
Mm-hmm.
handle that, they might have some proclivities. They might have some, not might, but they do have some human things. But the people who should be close to pastor are those who understand fully the weight and the call of what it is to be one. Um, and if it's hard to do that when you haven't been one, but I believe God has really called and anointed special people in ministry to be that for
Mm-hmm.
pastors. And
Sure.
so pastors have to be selective about who you allow in your corner. And don't listen to what come out their mouth, because I've been there before too. Listen to what they manifest.
Mm-hmm.
Look at what they manifest. Look at their heart.
That's good.
Sorry.
Um, what would you call the place in your life now?
I am rebuilding.
Good. That's good.
I am literally in a very real sense at ground zero, and I'm rebuilding my life piece by piece. And it is actually quite interesting, and it's quite intriguing to see now. I have to build differently than what I built before
Mm-hmm.
because now I'm building alone, and so building alone is interesting. You sit in the reality of who you actually are, and you rediscover you in a sense. And so, but yeah, I'm in my rebuilding stage, and I
That's awesome.
enjoy it.
That's awesome. I didn't see any more questions,
Let's. I know,
or did I
oh
miss some?
no. Chiquita Bell said it's most definite to preach while going through. Paul preached with a thorn in his side. That's why he took Luke the doctor everywhere. Absolutely.
Well, praise God. This has been a phenomenal part three of my life, my story, my testimony with Apostle Ryan J. Fontenot. I want to thank you all again for joining us tonight.